Welcome to Game Reactor's coverage of everything that is Borderlands 2. We traveled all the way to Dallas, Texas to visit Gearbox and got a hold of a lot of exclusive content that we're going to be showing you guys in the upcoming week. First on the agenda, the main man himself, Randy Pitchford.
I think one of the strengths of Borderlands that leveraged our experience was the fact that the moment-to-moment action of the shooter component was really solid. It really understood what it meant to play a shooter game, and it allowed the skills of being a first-person target kind of game come through in the gameplay. There had been some attempts at genre blending that have done some RPG elements with a first-person perspective. Some of those that didn't work out as well, that some other folks have tried, kind of weighted, I think, some of the RPG results in the way the gameplay unfolded. Like I'd shoot the guy and it would hit, but the result was based on a dice roll under the hood instead of the skill of the gameplay. And I think having that proper balance between where the skill of gameplay from the first person action games comes in versus the role-playing kind of stuff from collecting loot and skill trees and all that, like finding that balance is really tricky. We have obviously a ton of experience and skill on the FPS side, but the RPG stuff was definitely a new area for us.
But do you feel that it was the mixture that captivated people? Because as you say, there had been certain games before, and for non-game makers like myself, for instance, take first-person shooters, take loot. It sounds great. Why hasn't anybody done it before, right? Yeah. So do you think that it was the mixture of your game that really captivated people, or was there something else that just worked better?
I think there's a lot of neat things in Borderlands that all kind of worked. Certainly the root is the game design loop, and as a gamer who plays a lot of genres, I know that there's some compelling things about collecting loot and about growth and choice and discovery, and these compelling things that we typically find in and it's not just loot, right? There's a discovery to loot, but there's also discovery to the environment, and there's growth. The loot alone isn't enough. The loot has to present choices, and the loot also has to be the path towards growth, but not the only path towards growth. There has to be other path towards growth, and these things are compelling and engaging and fun, even in spite of really unfun game mechanics. When they're applied in some games that have where the actual moment-to-moment stuff, like I used to play NetHack. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Like I probably put 500 hours into NetHack. There's nothing about the interface or the moment-to-moment gameplay that I can call fun. I'm just really pressing arrow keys, and it's all keyboard driven. It's fundamentally a turn-based game, right? There's no, it's the interface itself isn't fun, and the feedback loop isn't fun. It was all text. I mean, it was antsy. There was no graphic, So, but the game was fun. And that's why I spent so much time in it. So all these other elements were really engaging. The bet was that for all of us that haven't necessarily been exposed to all these other things, for those of us that love first-person shooters, and maybe that's kind of our genre of choice, that there's a way to take those other elements that we know are really compelling and we know are rich and we know are motivating and fun, and apply them into the genre in a way that isn't mutually exclusive with the genre. And I think that's where it's been tricky for some folks, because some of these things, sometimes when you get into the design of it, it almost feels like some of those things that come from RPGs might be mutually exclusive with the way that shooters are fun, but they're not. And I think Borderlands kind of demonstrated that. And as a result, it's kind of like, a lot of, back before Borderlands came out, there were some skeptics and cynics about it, that thought it wasn't going to work. They thought, hey, if you want a shooter, you're just going to pick one of these others. If you want an RPG, you'll just pick one of those others. And what, I always kind of joke, it's kind of like a Reese's peanut butter cup. You know what I mean? It's like, look, chocolate tastes great and peanut butter's awesome. And guess what, though? If you put these two things together, it's not quite chocolate, it's not quite peanut butter, it's a whole new thing, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And most of the best food in the world it comes from the combination of flavors. And most of the best art in the world comes from the combination of color, not just the three primary colors. And we're getting to a point in the game industry where we're learning how to blend and make better meals, better food, and it's really exciting.
I think for a lot of people, Borderlands was really the game that sort of defined Gearbox as a developer, and I can see just from the sales on Steam. I mean, it's still popping up on like the first place on Steam. It's probably been like a huge seller for you guys. But what has the success of Borderlands meant for you as a developer?
You know, if it's funny to hear, you know, you say like, hey, Borderlands defined Gearbox, because I think every single title we've done, I've heard that said to me. Really? Yeah, from a, you know, opposing force to find Gearbox, and like now you guys are doing Blue Shift, and it's like you guys are clearly the guys that who could follow Valve, and you were able to do it, you know. And then like when we launched Brothers in Arms, it's like, wow, you built your own IP and you're doing this realistic military, more authentic than anyone who's ever done it before. This is defining Gearbox, and you know, so
I take it back.
I appreciate it. It's a compliment, but I actually think it actually betrays our strategy a bit, which is the reality is, it doesn't matter what you've done. What matters is what's entertaining us right now. And so, like, I love Borderlands, and we're about to launch Borderlands 2, and it's great, and we've really committed to it, and it's exciting. But I guarantee you in the future, whatever it is that we're going to be doing in the future is going to be that thing that defines us, because it's what you're bringing right now, and we've always got to stay hungry, and we've always got to stay motivated towards that even greater thing. How can we apply, like as exciting as Borderlands 2 is, and I'm astonished at how well we've done with this game. I know, like, it sounds kind of, I risk sounding arrogant, because, you know, it is my studio, but I mean, it's a team effort, and everyone committed themselves so wholly to it. So I think I think even though there's a lot of anticipation towards Borderlands 2, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. But as amazing as that, whatever that turns out to be, I'm certain that the things we even do after that are going to be even more, because we're going to be able to apply the lessons and apply the experience we've got and do some more interesting things down the road. So it's kind of interesting to think about, like, what defines the studio. And maybe over time, if someone actually looks at the full breadth of all the things that we do, maybe what defines us is that we do like to keep pushing, and we do like to keep bringing new things to the table. In terms of Borderlands 2, I think now the expectation's set, but you know, our mission there has been to meet or exceed those expectations. I think the expectations are very high for Borderlands 2. If you're asking me about value, I'm very confident that customers are going to feel the value in Borderlands 2, especially if they're using Borderlands 1 as the benchmark. If you're asking me in terms of like refinement of the game design principles, again, like, I think we really made some good decisions. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's such a subjective thing. Like, I think right now the most responsible thing to do, like, we committed ourselves, gave it everything we've got, and the game's going to come out. And I think the responsible thing to do is to listen and to react, because one of the other things too is, for many of us, the launch of Borderlands 2 is just the beginning. Like, when we submitted the game into certification recently, we weren't just like, all right, we're done, let's go home. We're actually, okay, now let's get started. And we started thinking about future efforts, starting to imagine and plan and get into what kind of DLC we would do. And you know, we promised that we'd add a new class to the game, the Necromancer. So let's get to work and actually deliver that, you know, and then thinking about, you know, we do have an online component, so you can connect with the game, and there's a lot of things that we can extend from that. You don't have to be online. We're not forcing that with Borderlands 2, but if you are, whether you're playing alone or with friends, if you are online and choose to connect to the online infrastructure, there's some other things that we can do that we can kind of extend with the game there, and we're going to be exploring that. We're also getting a lot of telemetry comes in, like what people like and what people are doing, and that feeds us, and that defines our decision. So for us, it's kind of a starting point. You know, so but it's certainly really interesting when, you know, going back to the core of your question, which is, you know, when we look at, you know, some of the things that other people have done, and, you know, we try to learn lessons from our own experiences, and certainly if we're smart, we're going to try to learn lessons from other people's experiences as well.
Besides all the content, we're also going to be running a week-long contest here on Game Reactor that gives you the chance to win some really cool loot signed by all the guys at Gearbox Studios. For now though, we're gonna have to ask you to hold on to your answers and just follow all the shows right here on Game Reactor. So the first question, what was the first game or expansion that Gearbox Software worked on?